I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up. Then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Lexi and Gabe. Today's guest is Michael, a serial tech entrepreneur from Israel, now based in Miami Beach, building his second company. His first company was a cybersecurity startup he co-founded in 2016 and scaled to $60 million in funding before walking away after 9 years as CEO. His new company is Flamingo. It started targeting the $380 billion managed service provider market, where small IT firms are drowning in vendor fees and paper-thin margins. The bet combined open source infrastructure with AI to let MSPs run more like software companies. They launched from stealth in October 2025 with $2.2 million raised and over 1,000 MSPs already on the wait list. Michael, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Do Hard Things podcast with your hosts, Gabe and Lexi. We're so excited. Michael, we just heard your bio. Before we get into all the questions we have for you, how's it going, man? How are things going? How's it been?
It's really good. It's really good. I just had my second baby girl be born a week ago, so I'm not getting much sleep, but happy.
Wow, congrats.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, I have a not baby girl anymore. She's 12, but being a girl dad is incredible. So congratulations, man. That's amazing stuff.
Yeah, a lot of joy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, you're not new to podcasting. You do this as well, and your story has been incredible. But I'd like to really unpack the origin story like we do with all of our guests, because in order to see success, we need to know where you started, right? And in your scenario, you really credit your success on the Israeli military, as a major influence of your entrepreneurial mindset. So what was that experience actually teaching you about leadership, pressure, taking that responsibility at such a young age?
That's a great question. So I started as infantry in the army, so nothing related to computers or, nothing like the 8-200 geniuses that write code all day long when they're in the army. So it was quite different. So I started with infantry. Later on, I moved to more the logistics side of things. And I think that the major thing about the Israeli army is that you're 18 years old and you get responsibility you shouldn't get, right? Like, because for example, when I was 18, I was managing budgets of like hundreds of millions of dollars. And in order to do that in an efficient manner, you can either mess up completely, right? And probably not going to keep your position, or you can try to automate it as much as possible with the tools you have. Back then, I was not an engineer or a programmer, so I could not really write code. So I was doing whatever possible on those limits. So it was mostly about, just building, like I'm almost 40 years old. So many of the listeners won't even know those type of technologies, but it's like Excel macros and Visual Basic and all these terrible technologies that Microsoft released like 20 years ago. So I was doing that, and this is kind of where I started with my passion towards technology and writing and building stuff. So it started very from the bottom in terms of tech stack and technology and things like that. But I think that the major thing, like if we talk on a macro level and from perspective of the rest of the IDF, is mostly about you get like you've been thrown at responsibility that is much bigger than any other 18 years old responsibility in any other country in the world, and that's a necessity, right? Like it's the army of the people. Everyone in Israel do the army. So I think that's a very strong catalyst when it comes to the entrepreneurial mindset of Israeli people in general, not even tech entrepreneurs, to see entrepreneurs in other fields as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you co-founded Vicarious in 2016 in Israel. Then you moved to New York, then Miami. Can you walk us through that journey? What made you leave Israel and keep pushing further?
Yeah, of course. So it took us many years to build the first stable product market fitted version of Vicarious. So we started the company in 2016, as you rightly said before. It took us almost 4 to 5 years to get product market fit. And back then you didn't have AI and you couldn't vibe code your way to product market fit. So we had to build, iterate, rebuild, iterate, and architectural changes took a while. So we raised our seed funding in 2019, and we raised our A funding in 2021, the end of 2021. And part of the investment back then we had is to have the investor. We got the lead investor is a San Francisco-based cybersecurity fund called Allegis Cyber, and it was very important for them that the CEO will be in the US in order to grow our commercial traction here. Prior to me moving to the US, most of our traction came from all over the world. We had a lot of customers in Latin America, in Europe, in Africa, any continent you can think of. And the goal of it was for us to kind of start building the US go-to-market team, and that's why I relocated to New York. New York is most of the time the first place where Israeli founders go because it's kind of normal hours when it comes to managing a team. In Israel, kind of like if you go to the West Coast, it's just you have like 2 or 3 hours in the morning that people are still working. So East Coast was the first decision, and then when we moved to New York, my wife got pregnant with our first boy, and I had sales kickoff with the sales team here in Miami Beach. By the way, we also had it in Orlando for the second time. So we had it in Miami Beach. I spent some more time here with my wife, and my wife went to Miami Beach before me, and she said we have to move there. And I told her I'm never going to move there. I'm not moving to Florida. And then she took me for like 2 years, for 2 weeks. Sorry, not 2 years. We came here. We spent some time at South Beach, south of Fifth. We fell in love with the city, and after a few months, we moved, and we love it ever since. We really, really love it. I think the tech community here we will touch during this podcast, but I think the tech community is building up. There's more VC funding floating in, and I think it's a great place to build.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's unpack Vicarious a bit, because you raised the $60 million, right? You serve major enterprise accounts. You built, most metrics by anyone's standards was ultra success. But then after 9 years, you walked away. So what made you leave something that you built from nothing? And how do you make such a big decision like that without second guessing yourself, or did you?
Yeah, so I think so the timing of me deciding to move on from Vicarious was right after we raised our B round, and I kind of felt that this new thing, this AI thing is coming out, and I felt like it's gonna disrupt many industries, and I think and my point of view is that that's gonna disrupt in a way that we didn't see so far, because if until now we always saw iterations of software replacing software, right now we're seeing something that is not software replacing software, is software taking over services, right? So it's actually human beings, and I don't think we saw anything similar to that since the Industrial Revolution, and that kind of inspired me to kind of think in different ways on how I see technology and how I see software, because software is no longer purely software. It's no longer dashboards, right? It's something you talk to and it does work for you, and it's outcome driven. It's always outcome. And this mindset kind of intrigued me to go and look for other challenges, and we'll touch in a second what I saw on the outsource IT space. But it kind of took me on a journey in order to explore potential in kind of gaining more AI/software market share in fields that did not exist before. So it's actually making the market bigger, not taking over someone else's software business. I also thought that at this point, the company had good amount of funding in the bank. I thought I'm leaving a good company to run, and the sales and everything was already stable. So I was not kind of leaving before I knew that everything back at Vicarious was stable. And this is kind of what my decision to move forward.
Very nice. And getting into an industry that has many established players is hard. What was the hardest part getting people to take you serious early on, and how did you really break through that?
So that's a great question. I think that, and that's relevant for any company that is building platform, and that's what we did at Vicarious. When you build a platform, you need to be on par with many of the functionalities that your competitors have, and we had this issue in multiple areas, because we were not just changing vulnerability assessment tools or patching tools. We were a consolidated product that did a bunch of work. And we'll talk later, like that's kind of inspired my decision to go after open source. But I think that's why it took us so many years to get to the product market fit as we saw it. And it's kind of drove us to be kind of a more like wide solution rather than a very deep one. Like if you will see most of the cybersecurity startups in Israel, they will go after a niche problem and will fix it in the best way possible and then start selling it to Fortune 500 companies. We had success with enterprise, like large enterprise accounts, but most of our success, because of the nature of the product that was very wide and had a lot of capabilities, came from the mid-market. That's why when we moved to the US, I also got introduced into the MSP space, because the way buyers behave in the US when it comes to consumption of IT and security services or products, they don't buy them directly unless it's a company that has more than 1,000 employees and above. So the way this structure of the market exists in the US is very different than it exists in Europe or in Israel. For example, I didn't really know what an MSP is when I moved here. So I learned about the business just by figuring out the commercial dynamics of what we need to do here. And that's kind of like my advice for people that build products is that a platform product is that they need to understand that their users are going to hold them accountable and will demand very large feature set from their products, because they're not going to switch off to something that is not as good as what they currently have.
All right, so I'm going to switch gears here, Michael, because you've done something that's quite unique to me, because I meet with so many CEOs and founders, specifically technical and product developers that are also CEOs and founders, that really remove themselves pretty quickly from the development, especially when they start to scale. And you've really stayed closely involved in writing code, even after being the CEO of a 50-person company. So when a lot of founders pull away from that, right, things change. So why did you resist that? And was staying technical give you an advantage, or what is it, the reason why you stayed in that?
I think that as a tech company, the moat, even when we talk about AI and everyone is talking about how SaaS is dying and all this type of stuff, even in the age of AI, and even more so in the age of AI, if a founder does not connect it to the product in a way that he knows every button in the product and he knows how the roadmap is going to look like 6 months from now and a year from now, it's quite difficult to have conversations with actual users, right? Because we talked like two seconds ago about how complicated is it to build platforms. If you build platforms, and even if it's an AI agent that sits on top of existing platforms, if you don't know what are the capabilities that those underlying APIs have or your agent have, it's quite complicated to be the first salesperson of the business, right? And that's kind of how I see myself. I need to make sure that Flamingo and Vicarious. I was probably not doing a great job at it back at Vicarious, but I need to make sure that once I recruit the first salesperson to this business, he has the playbook in order to replicate it 1 million times more. So I'm in charge of getting the repetitive sales motion in place before I'm starting to hire a go-to-market team. And I honestly don't see how it's possible if you don't have deep knowledge, understanding, and actually even acting as some sort of a product manager for the time being until the company grow larger. And then you have different functions. You have product manager, you have product marketing, you have salespeople, you have pre-sales people, etc. So in my opinion, and I'm quite radical, it is like a CEO that doesn't know the bits and bytes of the product in a very early stage and doesn't know how to sell the product is kind of missing the point. That's the main focus. The main focus is to get product market fit as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think you nail it with that. And my last question on Vicarious before shifting over to Flamingo, you built a community called V Society. What made you bet on community as a growth strategy when most cybersecurity companies really just rely on direct sales?
It's a great question. I think that if you look at the amount of funding and the evaluations that you have specifically for cybersecurity companies, but also for IT companies, it doesn't allow you to have customer acquisitions costs that are higher than your competitors just because of the dynamics. If you have a company like Wiz that raised $1 billion and they have a fantastic product, the combination of buying the market, right? Because they can just go ahead and do it. They can buy all the ads. They can buy the best booths on RSA, on other cybersecurity conferences. So if you don't have a motion that gets you the right leads in the right time at the right cost, because this is also something that is very important. This is kind of lesson learned, and I think I implemented it in an interesting way in Flamingo. They will just outcompete you, right? Because they have more money than you, and they have more access to cash and capital in the future, and they're gonna get less diluted than other companies. So I'm not saying that we didn't raise good amount of funding at Vicarious, but there were other companies raising much more money and higher valuations than us. So they had much more opportunities to buy, not to buy revenue, but to buy access to users that we didn't have. So we had to think about ways in order to increase traction and to increase top of funnel in ways that are not traditional. Like I didn't have the possibility to kind of have 30 SDR people just calling the entire market. Also, the market is quite big. This is also lesson learned from my previous company. Today, I'm very focused on who are we targeting and when. If back at Vicarious, we try to target any vulnerability remediation user, is just too wide, right? So you're going to spend a bunch of money on just targeting irrelevant people, but chunking up the market and having very precise segments inside that you're gonna go after, that's kind of what had us like more focused when it comes to commercial traction. And I think that the fact that it took us almost 4 or 5 years to get to the understanding that we're targeting mid-market accounts, and if we're targeting mid-market accounts in the US, we target them through MSPs, and if we do all of that, what will interest them is building scripts that will help them remediate threats. That's it's not obvious, right? It took us a while to figure it out, and in my opinion, we released this site like 6 years in. So it was not like, okay, we're just gonna build a community and we're gonna see what happened. We already had some understanding of what the users are looking for and which content will drive us higher, both on SEO but also on Reddit forums and things like that.
I love this. So let's do exactly what Lexi suggested. Let's switch gears and talk about starting over with Flamingo. Love the name, by the way. So you knew you wanted to build something in the MSP space, and I believe we had to quote is it's an underserved yet full of potential. But we also talked about that it's a very competitive landscape as well. So they're not super sexy or attractive category MSPs. So where did you really see that others were maybe overlooking to want to have you and motivate you to jump into this pond and become a major player in it?
It's a good question and good observation. I think that in general, venture capital is more convenient to be invested in products that target enterprise customers, right? Because the playbooks of VCs are kind of tailored into enterprise type of solutions, definitely when you focus on cybersecurity and IT. So they know that if they, push 10 million into the business, you will bring VP sales, you will bring CRO, you will bring all these positions, and you'll get the pipeline you want. I think that when the MSP market is $105 billion market growing over 10% a year, very, very fragmented, a lot of long tail, 75% of MSPs are below 3 million of revenue and less than 5 people. Most VCs do not know what an MSP is. They will know what an MSSP is, but they don't know what an MSP is. And for that reason, I think that the tooling that you see today in the MSP market are mostly companies that have built and architectured their product in probably 20 years ago. And I think that MSPs kind of struggled with finding the next gen tools. Like if today we have companies that disrupting DLP or disrupting other fields in cybersecurity, most of them don't even care about MSPs because they will put their sales force to go after a CISO of a Fortune 500 companies or an IT admin of, even if not Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 5,000 companies. But those kind of MSPs, they're kind of overlooked. But if you look at them from a purely market and ACV perspective, they're not that small. Most commonly, MSPs will serve 20 to 30 clients with 20 to 30 devices. So they will serve anywhere between 400 to 1,000 devices. For any sort of business, that's kind of a mid-market, maybe small mid-market account. But for us at Flamingo, and also back when I was at Vicarious, like you could get $50,000-$60,000 ARR deals just by working with MSPs, and they're pretty convenient customers. Like they're technical, they understand the product, and they're not going to come back to you with a bunch of questions on how to use it. So I saw firsthand kind of like how they struggle with the existing older solutions that they have. And I also saw a bunch of startups that started in the MSP space. Yes, they didn't have the highest valuations and it was not the most sexiest product in the market, but all of them got acquired super fast. And I said to myself, like, what would happen if someone is not going to get acquired? Like someone will actually build a VC-backed business, pre-seed, seed, Series A, etc., and will actually try to go after this market in a non-traditional manner, because we'll talk about this in a second. We also built a community here that that was released even before we released the product.
And your core argument is that MSPs are paying twice for the same problem, once to vendors and then again to technicians, and the solution is open source plus AI. What happens if the incumbents just copy that? Is it possible for them to copy it?
It's a good question, and I think that if we'll take a step back, so what's an MSP? MSP is an outsourced IT company that works with very small accounts. So imagine small law firm or credit union, and those MSPs will be the go-to to whatever need those smaller accounts need. Now, what MSP is doing behind the scene is that they will take a bunch of off-the-shelf commercial tools, pre-package them, pre-configure them, and then sell it on a per-seat basis for their underlying users. So if a credit union has 20 seats, they will pay 150 to 500 per seat per month. Now, if you break down a P&L of a common MSP, you will find out that 25 to 35% is going out to vendor payouts because they buy the commercial software and then they resell it, and another 25 to 35% will go out for technicians, level 1, level 2, level 3 technicians. Now, the way the market dynamics works today is that because of what I said before, because you don't have a bunch of innovation and you don't have a bunch of disruption in the MSP space, the incumbents have kind of took a very aggressive approach when it comes to their commercial tools. So they will lock MSPs in 3 years contract, they will raise the prices every year, etc. And they sit on a lot of revenue that is coming from tooling. Now, my goal when I'm going to disrupt the market is what I'm going to say, I'm going to zero out the tooling costs, okay? And by zeroing out the tooling cost, what happens is that if you have a company that has been selling MSP tooling for 2 decades, they already sit on $1 or $2 billion of recurring revenue that is purely coming from tooling. They cannot wake up one day and said, I'm just going to ditch off. I'm just going to kick back all this revenue, right? So I think that the moat when it comes to our edge in terms of MSP, purely MSP tooling, I think it's a financial moat. It's not necessarily a technical moat, because they sit on so much money that is being generated purely from MSP tooling. And we saw other SaaS products. We saw DocuSign and all these easier tools to disrupt with vibe coding already being disrupted and being crushed in the stock market. But we don't really see it in IT security. But I think it's just a matter of time, because those products are a bit more complicated. But what we're saying is quite different. We're saying we're not here to build everything on our own, because it will take us time and a lot of years to have this mature platform. We're just going to pick and choose the top open source tool that already been in the market, build on top of it single platform, single data layer, API, etc., and then serve it as almost an operating system for IT and security, rather than just disrupting all those tools one by one. And actually, the idea for that came from one of the MSPs that I was working with. He was using an identity and access management single sign-on tool, pretty expensive one. He wanted to increase his profit margin for that subset of his tooling. So he's simply spinned up an instance of a product called open source product called Authentic, moved all of his users, and increased his profit margins for that specific product to almost 100%.
Incredible. This is absolutely incredible, man. I'm loving this. So you were mentioning earlier, and I know I want to double down on this, is building the community, right? Because before you had a product, you launched Open MSP, and I think you got 1,000 MSPs on the wait list, like record time, which is 3 to 5% of the entire market. So how did you generate that type of traction before even shipping anything? And what does that really tell you about how to build a company?
I think that sometimes you have underlying streams in certain industries that are not very visible for people to see. I think that the open source stream that was happening in the MSP community was kind of overlooked, and we wanted to put a spotlight on it. Okay, so what we built Open MSP, which is it's not even a commercial product. It's a purely community. We have Slack community with 600 MSPs, and we also opened the waitlist for the product, because the product and Open MSP kind of go hand in hand. We crossed the 2K MSPs on our waitlist, so it's 5 to 6% actually right now. And the idea behind Open MSP was not, hey, MSPs buy our product. It was, hey, there is a bunch of commercial tools that have good open source alternative, and if you want to explore those alternatives, here it is. So Open MSP at core, it's a vendor directory for MSPs to actually build the current stack, click one button and get recommendations on which open source alternative they can deploy in order to increase their margins. And we even have a calculator that helps them understand exactly how much they're gonna see at the end of the month in terms of maybe not net margins but gross margins. And this is kind of where it started from. And I think that when you build this type of top of funnel machine, it's also kind of very different from, even if you market it with paid ads, it's very different from coming to a user and telling him, please buy my product, and just telling him, listen, that there is a better way. And this better way, we also going to provide it for you in a much more streamlined manner. And you will be also able to self-host it on your own without paying us a single dollar. So I think it took time for people to understand the connection between OpenMSP and Flamingo, and what do we want from them? Why are we trying to give them something for free? Because people are always suspicious when you give them stuff for free. But that's kind of what was the mindset. And if you think about it from ICP perspective, from ideal customer profile, that's exactly the people we're looking for, right? We're looking for the MSPs that are willing to adopt open source. So I think that this is kind of something I knew that I'm going to do at my second startup, is that I'm not going to think about distribution only after I'm releasing the product. I first think about distribution. We'll figure out that it's working, and only then we're going to release the product.
So now you've done this twice, and a lot of first-time founders often say the hardest part is not knowing what you don't know. What's different about doing it the second time? Do you think it's easier or harder?
I think it's easier, honestly. I think it's easier. I think I think that in the first startup, we were kind of like amazed that thing worked. Like we said, wow, we're gonna build a product and people are actually gonna use it. And when it happened, we kind of reverse engineer it on like what happened, what worked, what didn't work, and then we try to figure out what to do next. But there was no like a concrete blueprint or framework on how we're going to do it. When I built Flamingo, I kind of knew exactly what is the checkpoint to do other stuff. For example, I said it in the beginning of this podcast. Once I'm gonna get repetitive sales motion, this for me will be the moment where I'm handing off the go-to-market efforts to someone else. But I'm not gonna do it before. At Vicarious, we try to do it before multiple times and we fail. So I think that all of it, including some other stuff that are mostly related to the way I want to build the company internally, and that includes things like appointing team leaders, appointing tech leads, scaling up the business, when to bring the first VP, when to do all of those stuff. I think it's quite different the way I do it right now, and that's purely based on experience. Like I know that there is so much you can do as a founder, and you know, in the first startup you're trying to do everything, but you can't do everything. You don't have enough hours per day. And right now I'm kind of breaking it down to what's needed, how we can tackle it, and what's the best practice.
I love it. So you're in Miami. You're just telling us in the green room how beautiful the weather is there. I'm quite jealous. Lexi's in Florida too, and getting the beautiful weather. I'm up here in New York. But in regards to business, right? You raised pre-seed in Miami, which wasn't really your original plan, right? So you know, take me through that fundraising experience. What is it like? And you know, did that surprise you doing it there versus in New York or Israel? Walk us through that process.
Yeah, so I think that the fundraising process for the pre-seed was pretty interesting. First, because when I raised the first money for my previous company, there was no pre-seed. People were just raising seeds. And also in Israel, when you talk about cybersecurity per se, people most of the time jump on the pre-seed and raise the seed directly. I think that the interesting part about fundraising was that first, I have a lot of connections from cybersecurity VCs from my previous company, but I learned that certainty, and in the VC world, it's kind of funny to talk about certainty because you don't really have it. But VCs try to create as much certainty as possible when you talk about vertical focused VCs. So if you have cybersecurity VC that knows how to invest in cybersecurity companies and enterprise grade like enterprise facing cybersecurity businesses, it will be pretty hard to convince them to do something different. And Flamingo is very different. It's open source, it's targeting MSPs, it's kind of have different layers to it. I built it in a way that it's fully remote. So there's a lot of things that common VC needs to digest in order to invest in it. And I think that the fact that I built in Miami actually helped me with that, because I think that the Israel is very focused on enterprise focused cybersecurity businesses, but if you're building something different, it's hard to raise money. But here I could find investors with a bit of open mindset that can explore new fields. For example, our pre-seed investor, Focal VC, the guy spent like a week or 2 weeks just to research what an MSP is, because he didn't know what an MSP is, but he was open to it. He saw a big market and he was open to it when it came to his table. And I think that the fact that I'm in Miami actually helped me with that. And I'm very happy to partner with the VCs here. And I think there are great VCs here, and we're going to see more. There's a lot of new money that is coming from different places in Miami. Most of the money in Miami is real estate and hospitality and things like that, but there is a lot of new movement towards tech startup from that family offices and limited partners. So I think we're going to see a bunch of more deep tech, and this is kind of also relates to the community that I'm building here that we're going to talk in a second.
Yeah, and I really want to jump into that community because you have a lot of great communities going on, and the Miami Cyber Gang you really built to have a local tech and security community. Why invest so much time in that when you're also running a startup? And what do you get from a community that you can't just get from focusing on business?
So I think it's a question of how do people see the CEO role, right? Like I think that obviously when you start building the business, you do everything. You do HR, you do admin work, you do everything. But I think as the company scales, and that happened to me also back at Vicarious, the CEO is kind of more focused on strategic deals, strategic planning, and raising money. For me, raising money is people's relationship, and it's about the people. Like most of the VC deals that I've been part of, and the money that I raised, most of the time it was about the connection between the CEO and the partner. And I think in order to grow this, to grow those relationship and to grow those type of deals, that's what needs to be created. So obviously I'm doing it because I want to promote the Miami tech community, and I also want my kid to raise in a place where community promotes tech, and there is good, maybe it's not going to be Silicon Valley, but we're gonna have more activity when it comes to VC funding and startups and even jobs. You know, you don't have a bunch of startups here in Miami, but I'm pretty sure that 5 years from now you're gonna see a bunch of them recruiting people here. So people from colleges, people from universities in here. So I also care about the place that I'm living in, and I also wanna know that moving forward I will have a place that I can do good business at. So I think it's kind of a combination of like networking, you know, building a community that will promote more startups in the future, and just have interesting conversations with builders like me. We just had an evening a dinner here with a bunch of founders building in security and IT, and you know, you just exchange ideas, you exchange notes, you see what they're doing. Some of it you adopt, some of it you share what you're doing. So I think it's just great to be in a community of minded like people.
I love this. Well, in the legacy question, I want to ask you, you know, you have really given back to the community and to students and teaching them, hey, it's not the only way to go out and become successful is to go work for a big company, right? You tell them about starting businesses and starting something from scratch and entrepreneurism. So where does that actually come from, and how do you really, you know, what's your purpose and what's your legacy about really changing the next generation and how they see, you know, starting business and entrepreneurship?
I think that it's very interesting. I think it's like in Israel, everyone wants to be founders, right? Everyone's and a lot of people do it when they should, and some people do it when they shouldn't. I think that here the problem is the opposite. I think that people like students here, and you know, I've been a judge in hackathons in colleges here, and in high schools, and even in elementary schools. And I think that the talent that you see here is not less than any other place, including Silicon Valley or Israel. But the dream of kids here is not to open their own startups, because I think they're just not aware of it. Like we brought a VC to one of the hackathons as judge. A lot of them didn't know what a VC is. So my idea by doing it is like, is telling them, listen, you can build a product with AI. You can vibe code at least the first iterations of the product, and then you can go and raise money for it. And just providing them with that kind of mindset and idea that they can do that, that's pretty revolutionary for them. So I want to plant it in their brains that they don't need to go and work for Citadel or for a bank or for, I don't know, a private equity firm or a hedge fund. They can start their own businesses. And even not if like it's not even about becoming rich out of it. It's just about building something significant and building more businesses here that will facilitate more businesses and kind of catalyzing the entire ecosystem to become bigger and bigger. And it's kind of very similar to what happened with Israel. Like Israel in the beginning had a very strong issue of seed funding. People didn't believe that other people can build businesses. And once it started, and also the government kind of chipped in and helped with that, you could see that it was a crazy amount of startups. Like today, there are like 7,000 startups in Israel. And Florida is probably population-wise is bigger than Israel, so theoretically it can grow a larger startup ecosystem here.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us on this show. I cannot wait to get this out to our audience. Who's that right person in our audience that should reach out to you, and what's the best way for them to contact you?
So we're now in the last phases of completing our seed funding. So we have a bunch of new positions that are gonna get opened. We're looking for people in almost any G2M function. So we're looking for marketing people. We're looking for customer success people. We're looking for also engineers. So anyone that is in kind of have experience in management positions on those fields, definitely reach out to me directly or to our HR. She's also in Florida in Dania Beach. So feel free to reach out. Obviously, if you're an MSPs, we'll always be happy to include you in our beta program. So feel free to reach out. And that's pretty much it. And I'd like to thank you, Gabe and Lexi, for pulling up this amazing podcast. It was great.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us on the show. And everyone, please go follow Michael and reach out to him. And to everyone listening, please go ahead and keep doing those hard things. And Lexi and I will see you on the next one. Take care.